that I forgot to load up. A little bit of an intro coming in. So here we go. Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan. And this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And I've got a question for you today. Do you know what purpose is? Because I feel like I've been told to find purpose a lot, and I'm not really sure what it is or how to find it. So I've got a special guest with me today. His name is Ian, and he is the founder of Purpose U. And there's a whole lot more that goes on with that. So over the last 20 years, Ian has helped more than 400 organizations to find their purpose and become consistently uniquely remarkable through his proprietary blueprint process. Blueprinting defines organization's purpose in 7 words or less and uses it to design how it will operate and communicate. So we can take this kind of same structure and apply it to people, right?
Absolutely. And that's what happened is that I created this structure or model, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, and have been doing it for about 20 years.
Sweet.
But
Um.
then when COVID hit,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that we were not going to get much business for like at least 2 years,
Mm.
I decided to get my business coaching certification
Oh.
to tide me over.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I adapted this corporate model for defining your purpose and having it guide everything you do and say. I adapted it to individuals. And initially I did it just one-on-one in the coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were my client, we'd define your purpose and then I would coach you through the filter of your purpose.
Mm.
But then I ran into I actually had lunch with a five-time corporate client of mine. Every time he
Oh.
got a new CEO gig, he brought us in to do a blueprint.
Nice.
And I told him about this individual blueprint, and he said, "Whoa, I
Uh-huh.
have an online teaching
Mm.
infrastructure that I can just plunk on top
Huh.
of your personal blueprint. And rather than you doing it one to one, you can do it one to millions by teaching it in a course." And I went, "Oh, that
Hmm.
kind of appeals to me."
Yeah.
And so I have one business that's
Uh-huh.
like this big sort of process for defining your purpose and having it guide everything you do and say. And then I have the second business over here, which is the individual extension of it, so that
Oh.
people can actually find their purpose and
Wow.
then lead a purpose driven, a meaningful, purpose driven life.
Wow. That is really interesting because it takes both the like corporate soulless aspect and brings in the humanity at the
Hmm.
same time. And I really like that because it's not so much sitting there saying like, "Oh, we're here for money, 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 money,
Yeah,
money."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah,
real quick, I did forget to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Good. Um,
I've got this
and
bizarre thing happening with my eye, but it's
ah,
temporary.
oh, okay.
So I'm actually cross eyed. So I
Oh
have
man,
to keep one eye covered so I don't see double.
really?
Yep. I woke up a month ago.
Huh? And it's just been like that?
Yep. And it
Huh?
cures itself.
Wow. Okay. Well,
So other
uh,
than that, I'm hunky dory.
man, I don't know about you, but I feel like having my sight be all messed up all of a sudden would have really put me in a tizzy.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And it causes a lot of fears about, hey, what's going on inside here that
Mm-hmm.
caused this to happen. But fortunately, all the bad stuff got ruled out.
Oh, that's really good.
Mhm.
I'm really glad to hear that it's temporary and everything, but whenever you said that you were stricken with fear about that, do you feel like you were losing your purpose?
No, so here's the role, and I know we're going to talk about what purpose is,
Yes.
but before we talk about what it is, or maybe I should start there
Yeah, yeah.
and then talk about how it benefits you
Okay.
when you are feeling anxiety, fear, depression, any of
Mhm.
those negative feelings that
Negative.
are related to mental health issues, whether they be just sort of caused by what's going on around you, or they're more organic.
Mhm.
So
So
as we were, as I was telling you before we started recording, if you go
mhm.
online and you read about purpose, you can find a lot of stuff about purpose.
Mhm. A whole
Um,
bunch.
you can find the benefits of it. You can find, but the one thing that you can't find is a definition of what it
Uh,
actually is.
mhm.
And this is my pet peeve, being in the purpose, industry,
Uh-huh.
is
So,
that everyone talks about all the great things about purpose, but they don't tell you what it is.
yeah,
And
so
the guy who told me what it is was Pablo Picasso, the painter.
really?
Yeah, because he has a famous quote.
Uh-huh.
And his quote is, the meaning of life is to find your gift, right? So the
Mhm.
meaning
Mhm.
of life is to find your gift, and your purpose is to share it with the world,
Mm.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
So I have a tendency to simplify. That's my thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I just took that expression from two sentences to one.
Ooh.
And I said, your purpose is to find your gift and share it with the world.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I
So
like that.
hold that thought for a moment.
Okay.
20 years, yeah, 20 years ago when I started the corporate business,
Mhm.
um, it has a three-part methodology. So
Okay.
it's a set methodology that I lead CEOs through.
Okay.
And the first part of that methodology is to define the one thing at your essence as an organization, company or charity or whatever,
Mhm.
one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable,
Okay.
right?
Just one.
Just one. So
Does it have to be the one?
when you think about big companies
Uh-huh.
like General Motors, or
Walmart.
Apple, or Microsoft, or whoever,
Mhm.
at their core, they have one thing that makes them uniquely remarkable. And if you ever saw Simon Sinek's TED Talk, Start With Why,
Mhm.
he told you what Apple's is,
Mm.
right? Apple's is changing the game.
Mhm.
So Apple never invented anything,
No.
not a single thing they invented. But what they
Uh-huh.
did do is they took things that existed and they changed the game
Mhm.
in those things.
Yep.
Computers existed before Apple, but they
Mhm.
changed the game with computers with the graphical user interface.
Mhm.
Changed the game with cell phones when they stole that whole industry away from BlackBerry,
Yeah.
and tablets. They weren't the first tablet.
Mm-mm.
So changing the game. There you
Uh-huh.
go. Three words. And by the way, our standard
Uh-huh.
for articulating your purpose, articulating that one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable,
Uh-huh.
is 7 words or less.
Gotcha.
So Apple changing the game. That's why everyone's there. That's why everyone works there. We want
Mhm.
to be game changers. Why do you buy Apple products? Because they're a badge of, they make a statement about you. I'm a
Mhm.
game changer because I use an iPhone. you know, but that's the way we wear products and brands.
Mhm.
So I created this methodology where you first define the one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable in
Mhm.
7 words or less. And
Okay.
then you use it to design how you're going to operate as a business, and
Okay.
design how you're going to communicate as a business. So that all the activities of the business, everything that you do and say, are
Mhm.
always all a direct reflection of that one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable.
Hmm.
So then I ran into this Picasso quote,
Uh-huh.
which I shortened to, your purpose is to find your gift and
Mhm.
share it with the world. And I looked at what I was doing here with companies, and the first
Mhm.
step is to define the one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable. That's
Hmm.
your gift,
Huh.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just started wrapping my corporate service
Mhm.
in a blanket of purpose, because your purpose is that one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable. And
Hmm.
so once you know what that is, then you can share it with the world,
Ooh. I like
right?
that. Yeah,
So
yeah.
getting back to your original question, which is, when I'm feeling, anxiety or fear
Mm-hmm.
or any kind of pain,
Mm-hmm.
what role does that play?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you what my purpose is.
Okay.
Mine is transforming confusion into clarity.
Mm.
That's what makes me uniquely remarkable at my core, right? That's
Uh-huh.
my gift, is
Uh-huh.
being able to transform confusion into clarity.
Okay.
And so whenever whenever you are burdened
Mm-hmm.
with the pain of whatever, that's going to compromise your decision making process.
Mm.
You're
Yeah.
feeling anxiety, maybe even feeling fear.
Mm-hmm.
You've got all these negative feelings that are happening,
Yeah.
and they can cause you, they can disrupt your good decision making and cause you to make bad decisions in that, or just cause you to not make the kind of decisions that are going to help you get out of the hole that you're in.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
when you have your purpose
Mm-hmm.
sitting there, and nobody can ever take that away from me,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's my superpower.
Mm.
So that, by the way, knowing that just elevates my confidence, right? Just knowing that I have a superpower that nobody can take away from me.
Uh-huh.
But the other thing is that rather than asking the question,
Mm-hmm.
what should I do here?
Hmm.
I've got a whole bunch of options.
Mm-hmm.
What should I do here?
Yeah.
The question you ask is, which of my options is most aligned with my purpose?
Ooh.
So now
Okay.
I'm saying, which of my options
Mm-hmm.
is most aligned with transforming confusion into clarity?
Yeah.
And that's a far easier question to have or to
Yeah.
answer
Mm-hmm.
than
Yeah.
just the general question, what should I do here? You've got no context, you've got no basis for your answer.
Uh-huh.
Whereas if I say, which direction, which options
Mm-hmm.
are most aligned with my purpose, with that one thing that makes me uniquely remarkable,
Mm.
then that's a solid, tangible thing that I'm grounded to that can
Yeah.
always help me make better decisions.
Hmm. That is really
So
cool.
that's the simple definition of what purpose is. Your
Uh-huh.
purpose is to uncover that
Mm-hmm.
one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable and share it with the world. And
Mm.
when you know your purpose, one of the primary benefits to you is better decision making at all times, but especially when you're feeling the burdens of whatever it is that you're feeling in the moment. And those burdens are going to compromise your decision making. This is how you keep your decision making on the straight and narrow. Say,
Mm.
what path, what options, what direction, what
Mm.
choices are most aligned with my purpose, with that one thing that makes me uniquely remarkable.
Hmm. Okay. Wow. So purpose is not only something to do, but it is also essentially an adjective of sorts, or almost a noun that someone has, right? So if everyone has a unique purpose, then everyone is rather unique. But what about the people that feel like they're not unique?
Okay, that's such a great question. That is such a great question because I think we've got
Mm-hmm.
8 billion people in the world, and
Yeah.
I'm going to hazard a guess
Mm-hmm.
that at least half of them
Mm-hmm.
are walking around saying, there's nothing special about me.
Uh-huh.
And because there's nothing special about me, one,
Mm-hmm.
I can't accomplish anything special. And
Yeah.
two, I don't deserve anything special.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for
And
sure.
until you can find me
Mm-hmm.
two people who are absolutely identical, and even the most identical of identical twins are not identical,
Nope.
until you can find me somebody who is exactly identical to somebody else
Mm-hmm.
out of those 8 billion people, that means that everybody has something that makes them uniquely remarkable.
Mm.
So, sorry. Um, so, everybody has something uniquely remarkable.
Uh-huh.
And if they can just discover that and
Mm-hmm.
tap into it,
Hmm.
they get the benefit. First of all, like I said, it
Uh-huh.
elevates your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
because you know you have a superpower that nobody else can take away from you. And you know when and where you can use that superpower and be beneficial to other people as well
Huh.
as yourself. But
Okay.
then the other thing is just this whole idea. You know, it's kind of boring in a sense, but just like better decision making. You
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
decisions about your life. And who doesn't want that?
It's younger me did not want that. I can tell you that. Um.
Can we take that quick break now?
Yes. Go for it. Go
Thank
for it.
you.
Mm, let's see.
Hey Siri,
Uh-huh.
timer 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Sweet.
Needs 15 minutes more.
All right. That's plenty of time. We can do this in as many segments and chunks as we would like. But that really does strike well with me because it's like, for some reason, I'm imagining, and I like to think in metaphors and analogies and stuff like that. So I'm kind of imagining that finding like my personal purpose would be going through a bag of seeds and finding my purpose seed and then going like, all right, well, now which garden do I put it in or where do I put it? Does that kind of sound right? Because
The where do you put it
yeah,
becomes easy.
how does it come easy
Once you
though?
know everything, once you know what it is, it all
Hmm.
falls into place.
Okay,
Um,
so the purpose is essentially the root of the tree. Would you say?
yes, it absolutely is. It is the
Okay.
root of the tree. And the thing is, but you're sort of asking an interesting question, which is
Hmm.
because you said you have to sort through the seeds to find out the one,
Uh
right?
huh.
So how do you do, what is the actual process
Yeah. What
of
is it?
sorting through the seeds? And what I do,
Hmm.
you can see on the screen that it says Purpose U there. Purpose
Yep.
U is an online course that enables you to define your purpose in 7 words or less, and then use that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Use that, to guide your life, to guide a purpose-filled life. Um, and the process that we use, which by the way is an AI-driven process.
Mm.
So you have your own personal AI assistant
Hmm.
that is helping you through every step of the process. So you've got me sitting on one side with a whole bunch of videos telling you exactly what to do, and then you've got Wordsmith, that's what we call it, Wordsmith on the other side
Uh huh.
that is helping you do two things. One is find the words because
Hmm.
not everybody has a great facility for that.
Hmm.
But the other thing is to see what we
Hmm.
don't see.
Oh, kind of like checking our blind spots, right?
Yeah.
Huh.
So, and I'll get to that in a moment
Okay.
because what we do is
Hmm.
we get you to pick two accomplishments from your life,
Ooh.
ones that you're really proud of.
Okay.
And ideally, you pick one from your personal life and one from your career.
Okay.
And what we do is we break that down. Because here's the thing about
Hmm.
it, when you were involved in an accomplishment that you're really proud of, really
Hmm.
proud means like you emotionally, yeah, 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 I was a part of this or I
Uh huh.
did this. And by the way, you
Yeah.
could be, you could have done it all yourself, or you could be cast of thousands.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
whatever your role was, you were really, really proud of it. And what happens is when you're in those situations where you're participating and you're excited and
Hmm.
motivated and inspired and that sort of thing, your purpose is raging because your purpose is that one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable. So
Yeah.
you are contributing that one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable
Huh.
to this accomplishment.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
your purpose is raging because you're loving what you're doing.
Yeah.
So we say, okay, well, if your purpose is raging while you're doing this, then let's tear it apart,
Yeah.
take away all of the accomplishment
Uh huh.
so that we're just left with the purpose. So what
Hmm.
I do is I work you through
Okay.
an AI assisted process
Hmm.
where and it's 7 steps, and the first step is to identify your two accomplishments. So super simple.
Okay.
And then I lead you through a process, and in step 7,
Uh-huh.
you produce
Hmm.
3 lists:
Okay.
your beliefs, your
Mm-hmm.
wants, and your talents.
Ooh.
And those are the components of
Mm-hmm.
your purpose,
Okay.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
so you've got a purpose and you've got it defined in 7 words or less. But
Uh-huh.
if you were to tear purpose apart into its components, sort of like breaking an atom apart into electrons and neutrons and protons and
Mm.
neutrinos and all the other wild stuff that's going on at that level,
Yep.
what you get is your beliefs, your wants, and your talents.
Okay.
So,
Hmm.
from your story of what got you so excited about working in these accomplishments,
Mm-hmm.
we get Wordsmith to say, look into that story
Huh.
and give me options
Yeah.
for my beliefs, wants, and talents. And it'll produce 10 of each,
Oh wow. Okay.
right? And then
Huh.
you just delete the ones that don't resonate with you.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then you're left with a list of beliefs, wants, and talents.
Huh.
So AI,
Uh-huh.
you didn't see those beliefs, wants, and talents in your story.
Uh-huh.
AI did.
Yep.
And it said, here's what I see. And you say, all right, I agree with you 70% of the time.
Yeah.
And then here's my list.
Whoa.
And then what we do is
Uh-huh.
then we enter the next phase of the process,
Okay.
which is to say, hey, Wordsmith, these are my beliefs, wants, and talents.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the common thread there that ties them all together in a single
Ah.
phrase of 7 words or less? And it
Okay.
starts pumping out options for you.
Huh.
And you work through the process of
Uh-huh.
pumping out options. Maybe you take a piece from this option and a piece from that one and you put them
Mm-hmm.
together, or maybe it's just sitting right there for you.
Yeah.
But that's how Purpose U leads you through the process
Okay.
of breaking down something you know to discover
Uh-huh.
something that you don't know.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to a guy who went through our course. I reached out to him.
Mm-hmm.
I had to start the email with, "Hey, this is not a this is not an automatically generated email. This is
Uh-huh.
really me reaching out to you to ask you."
Uh-huh.
But and I ask people
Mm-hmm.
when you got to your 7 words or less on a scale of 1 to 10,
Mm-hmm.
how inspired are you by it? And
Oh wow.
if it's an 8 or more, I'm happy. But if it's
Oh,
less than
sweet.
an 8, I'm not happy.
Mm.
Anyway, this guy was a 9. And
Sweet.
I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. When those words came out, I just sort of felt my life fell into place. Everything
Oh.
I had been doing and everything that I want to do
Mm-hmm.
was reflected in that. And I just sort of felt like a coming together."
Huh.
And
Yeah.
I had the same feeling when I came up with transforming confusion into clarity. It's like, "Oh, that's me. That's me. That's what I love to do," you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Uh Holy crap, man. You've created something great. And
Thank
like
you.
hearing him and his reaction to that, like it's weird because I'm like as you're describing all this, I'm going through like, okay, I'm going to go do this as soon as we're done here, you know, and I was like having that same kind of emotional feel like if everything just fell into place all of a sudden, it'd be like, oh, emotional overwhelm, but in the best sense,
Yeah.
you know? And the
It's not overwhelmed, though. It's not
yeah,
overwhelmed.
yeah,
It's the
yeah.
opposite.
So whelmed?
It's the coalescing
Ooh, okay.
so that you're not overwhelmed, so that it
Ah.
all fits, so that you
Huh.
see, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's a metaphor that I love, and I stole it from a prof at Northwestern University. And he wrote a book that I took a course on it in university. It's
Uh-huh.
called Gödel, Escher, and Bach. And Gödel is a German mathematician who
Hmm.
came up with a theorem that not only rocked the math world, but just rocked the world in general. Escher is, that
Mm-hmm.
mind-bending artist that we all had hanging up in our
Mm.
dormitories in university. And Bach is the guy, he composed a few catchy tunes on the piano.
Yep.
He said, they're 3 different people, but he said they're 3 different stones cast from the same shadow. No,
Mm.
sorry. It's the opposite of what I just said.
I
There are
was about to
three
say,
different shadows cast from the same stone.
gotcha.
And he attempts in the stone in the book to describe the stone. Well,
Uh-huh.
what I'm going to tell you
Mm-hmm.
is that purpose is your stone, and
Yeah.
everything that you do and say is a shadow cast from that stone.
Hmm.
And Keegan, you don't know what your purpose is in 7 words or less, but it's still there and it's still
Mm-hmm.
doing its work.
Yeah.
And so everything that you do and say, I'll say for the most part, is a shadow cast from your purpose stone.
Hmm.
But when you can articulate it in 7 words or less, then everything you
Mm-hmm.
do will be a reflection of your purpose because you know what it is. You
Mm-hmm.
can live your purpose with intentionality
Yeah.
rather than having it control you subconsciously like it's doing now,
Yeah.
right?
Um, yeah. And like you're answering some questions before I even get the chance to ask them, which I love because it just shows me that you've thought so far ahead in not only the presentation, but the actual work itself. Because it also shows me that you've been through this yourself, so you know the questions to ask.
Right.
And that was one of the things was I was going to ask like how do we find our blind spots? Like whenever you were talking about your beliefs once and beliefs
Talent.
want talents. Thank you. So whenever you were listing those off, I was trying to go through my head like, what are mine? You know, and then part of me was also going like, well, what if I don't? And then because I'm going through this whole stage of like going from feeling unworthy and unloved and everything to actually feeling decent. And so
Mhm.
part of me is like, well, yeah, I feel a whole lot better, but there's going to be those pitfalls, those blind spots where it's like, what are they? I don't know. But at the same time, what you just described takes so much pressure off. And I think that that would be something on someone like myself trying to figure out what is pressure. It's like, not what is pressure, what is purpose. I don't want to have pressure on me trying to figure out my purpose because then it makes me kind of a little avoidant to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well the thing is purpose is like therapy, right? You can't do it you can't do it to yourself.
Yeah.
So if you go and try and do it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then you're just going to feel anxiety, you're going to feel pressure and you're going to be
Oh.
frustrated. And the thing is, the two criteria of a
Mm-hmm.
good purpose statement,
Mm-hmm.
aside being short,
Okay.
clear, concise and compelling,
Mm-hmm.
is one is it's so logical that it's self-evident, right? You don't
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
explain it.
Uh-huh.
Do I have to explain transforming confusion to clarity to you?
No.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other is it resonates on a deep emotional level.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to resonate on a deep emotional level with me because
Mm-hmm.
it's my purpose. For you, my purpose does not have to resonate on a deep emotional level unless the conditions exist
Hmm.
for it to be a benefit to you.
Oh.
So
Okay.
let's say you're not happy at work
Mm-hmm.
and you're depressed, you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling frustration, you're feeling pressure, you're
Mm-hmm.
worried about getting fired. And oh gosh, I just lost my train of
Oh, hey,
thought.
it happens to me all the time. Do not worry.
Right. So what am I explaining here?
You
Oh, I know what I wanted to say.
okay.
I'd like you to think of your blind spots, not so
Mm.
much as blind spots, but as things that throw barriers in your way.
Mm.
And yeah, they're coming from your blind spot because you may not see them coming. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But they present themselves as barriers. And then you've got to
Oh.
make decisions about how you're going to overcome that barrier.
Mm-hmm. And then that challenges your purpose.
Well, then rather than saying, how am I going to overcome this barrier?
Mm-hmm.
Which means that you've got, a million options to consider from the sane to the crazy to what can I do here?
Mm-hmm.
What are the options for me that are most aligned with my beliefs, with my purpose?
Mm.
That's a much simpler question to answer.
Yeah.
And when you come up with an answer that's aligned with your purpose, Remember, I said your beliefs, wants, and talents are the components, the elements of your purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, when you say this decision is aligned with my purpose, what you're really saying is it's aligned with my beliefs, wants, and talents.
Hmm.
And that's why it feels so natural to you, so organic,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
Is because you're making decisions that are aligned with your beliefs, wants, and talents.
Huh.
Here's the other thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a decision that's not aligned with your beliefs, wants, and talents. But you're doing it from a position of full awareness. You're saying, I know this is more aligned with my purpose, but I choose to do this other thing instead. And I am doing it with full awareness
Mm-hmm.
that it's not the most aligned. But again, you're doing
Yeah.
it with awareness.
Yeah. In that sense, if you're doing it with awareness, you can't really be mad if anything goes not great, right?
No. You've warned yourself that it might not work. But on the other hand,
Go for it.
sorry, you've warned yourself that it might not work.
Uh-huh.
But on the other hand, it might.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't, then you just go back to your purpose and you say, okay, which of my options were more aligned with my purpose?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just run and do that.
Alrighty.
And then no more interruptions.
No worries. Oh, guys, stretch my knees. Oh, that was my knee. Oh, how did I pop my knee? Oh.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Of course. So as you're saying, with everything lining up with your beliefs, wants, and talents, that would really make life easier, because then it's a lot less of, I feel like life, whenever we're living without our purpose and being intentional with it, is more like we're trying to build that statue like by reduction, and so chipping away at it. But knowing our purpose is more like having a scope, like a frame ready to go, and we're
That's
adding
right.
to it.
That's right.
Okay.
You have a context.
Uh-huh.
When you're chipping away there, you're chipping away and you're saying, I'm not sure where I should be chipping away, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure what I'm looking for, and I just hope it makes me feel good at the end,
Uh-huh.
whatever I produce, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
having your purpose as a context and saying, this needs to show up, how I chip away at this needs to show up in alignment with my purpose. So I'm going to do, so you have more guidance
Yeah.
for how to conduct yourself going forward.
Yeah.
Right?
And yeah, because if someone is always continuously chipping away things that they're trying to figure out if it works or not, then they may actually end up missing something because it didn't line up with one of the other two, right? So that's really interesting. Everything I know about mental health and just personal well-being is wrong, and that's why I'm glad we're doing this.
Let me give you an example of
Okay.
somebody whose life sort of fell into place
Oh,
after they
let's go.
discovered their purpose.
Okay.
So I did a corporate blueprint with a university. And it
Okay.
was a great experience. They loved it. I loved it. We all fell in love, and we're still 10 years later, we're still in contact. But then
Mm-hmm.
one of the guys on the blueprint team, the chief marketing officer,
Mm-hmm.
reached out to me when he heard that I, had developed a personal blueprint.
Mm.
And the story he told me was, as a chief marketing officer,
Mm-hmm.
all his days were 14, 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
And that was pretty well, at least 5 days a week, and then, maybe 4 or 5 hours a day each day on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
So, as a friend of mine said to me one day, what role do people play in the rat race? They're
Ooh.
the rat,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So he was a rat,
Mm-hmm.
and he was 5 years away from retirement.
Ooh.
He was unhappy.
Mm.
It was affecting his health. It was affecting his marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And he was looking forward to a happy retirement with his wife.
Yeah.
And he said, all I need to do, I'm very close to having the money that I need to retire.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need, you know, to
Money.
to stay on this treadmill.
Yeah.
And we said, well, let's figure out what your purpose is, and then we'll see where that leads things.
Mm-hmm.
And not surprisingly, for somebody whose career is to make things clear,
Mm-hmm.
to communicate in a way you understand,
Yeah.
his purpose was making things simple.
Hmm. Okay.
And that
So.
really resonated with him.
Uh-huh.
That's what his writing was all about. That's what his communications, and as the overseer of the marketing department,
Mm-hmm.
it was creating simple messages that were compelling.
Hmm.
And so, but when he looked at making things simple and
Uh-huh.
the life that he was living as the chief marketing officer, it was the
Mm-hmm.
other end of the spectrum. It was
Hmm.
highly complex.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of anxiety. There was a lot of pressure,
Mm.
and he hated it.
Yeah.
And so, if he was going to live to his purpose,
Mm-hmm.
making things simple,
Mm-hmm.
then he had to simplify his career.
Ooh. Yeah.
And so what his purpose gave him permission to do is do what almost nobody does.
Step down.
Backwards, not down,
Yeah.
backwards.
Ooh. Okay.
And he became
Huh.
a corporate writer.
Hmm.
And he got hired.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure where you are, Keegan. I'm in Toronto.
Texas.
You're in Texas. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So about an hour away from me is a university called the University of Waterloo. And
Hmm.
University of Waterloo is well known in Silicon Valley because like 25% of the people in the valley are from the University of Waterloo. It's Canada's
Huh.
foremost math and computer university.
Okay.
Um, and oh God,
Oh,
I spend so much time creating context for what I'm going to say.
no, you're
Right.
good.
Yep.
He was stepping backwards
Stepping
after you.
backwards.
Yep.
Right. So I'm just not sure why I mentioned Waterloo. Oh, I
Uh,
remember now. I remember now.
okay.
So the city itself,
Mm-hmm.
Waterloo, and the University of Waterloo campus
Mm-hmm.
has become an incredible tech hub. There's like you'll see, RIM has a huge presence
Mm-hmm.
on that campus. Apple, Microsoft, face all these companies. They have
Uh-huh.
big buildings on this campus,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so there is an organization there that is a
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit organization that promotes the Waterloo tech
Hmm.
community.
Okay.
And he got a job as a corporate writer for them.
Oh wow.
So he goes in at 9,
Mm-hmm.
he writes all day, he goes home at 5.
Huh.
And that's it. And it's like, first, when he resigned and he first got the job here, it's like, oh, 5 o'clock, my time's free for the rest of the day. Woohoo! Now what am I going to do? I had to figure out the new life, right?
Yeah.
But what he really wanted to do was write novels.
Oh, okay.
So
Huh.
he worked for this organization
Mm-hmm.
for the next 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then he retired.
Okay.
And he and his wife, they moved out to this lovely area on Vancouver Island on
Mm-hmm.
Canada's west coast. And he wrote his first novel, and he's in the process of writing his second.
Whoa. So is his book actually like out in stores and stuff?
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. Cool. What's his name?
Well, I don't like to,
Gotcha.
tell the names of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. No.
Like
You're
I've
good.
got permission to tell the stories, but not name the names.
Yeah. No. You're good. That was just a confidentiality test
Yeah.
because.
So, but the thing is, you see how he used his purpose as a decision
Uh
maker.
huh. Yep.
I had another client. This is. I love telling this story. So I think this was her third or fourth CEO gig. So
Wow.
she had been around.
Mm-hmm.
And we were having a drink after work one day, and she
Mm-hmm.
said, I said, how's work going? And she said, well, I'm kind of bored because the company's running itself. And I said, well, I think it sounds like it's time for your next gig. And she said, oh, yeah, it is. But you know what? The thought of it scares the living daylights out of me. I said, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, this is a woman
Mm-hmm.
who graduated from high school at 16
Oh, wow.
and had her master's by the time she was 18.
Damn.
And so she said, when I joined this company, it was on the verge of bankruptcy, and I had to put the blinkers on. I had to keep my head down, stick my nose to the grindstone, and all those other cliches.
Mm-hmm.
And now 5 years later, the company's running itself. But in that 5 years, because I'm like this, head down, blinders on, I don't know, it feels like the business world has passed me by.
Yep.
I don't know if my skills are in demand anymore. I don't know if I'm current, with. So anyway, she had all this uncertainty, and this really introduces an interesting concept inside the whole idea of purpose, which is trigger events.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
So trigger events are things like changing career, whether you're doing it by design or by force, graduation, retirement, empty nest,
midlife crisis.
Absolutely, absolutely. And here's the process of a trigger event. The trigger happens. It creates a whole bunch of unanswered questions about your future. And because those questions are unanswered, it causes anxiety or, in the extreme, fear. Right? If you get fired, you're going to feel anxiety and maybe even fear.
Yeah.
Right? So trigger event happens. All sorts of unanswered questions are created, and that creates anxiety or even fear.
Yeah.
And so that's the process for Keegan. It's end of day for me, and oh my God, I don't know what's happening with my brain.
You're good. We were talking about the. I'm following right along with you. And
yeah, why did I bring up trigger events?
Because she's afraid to
change
careers.
Right.
Yes.
So this was her trigger event, right?
Yeah.
She's choosing to change careers. She's choosing. She didn't get fired. She didn't get laid off. Totally her choice. And she still has the unanswered questions and the anxiety and fear as a result. Is the marketplace going to want me? Are my skills relevant? Will I like my next job? Will the people accept me? These are all unanswered questions for her that cause anxiety. So anyway, I said, well, I tell you what, why don't we figure out what your purpose is and see where that sends us? So I just got her to talk. And she talked about how much she loves cleaning up a mess. Right?
Yeah.
Like, so where she was when we were having that drink was the company's running itself.
Yeah, it's all cleaned up.
It doesn't engage her brain. There's nothing there for her. Right?
Yep.
So, we talked, and she basically said, I need something that is a huge mess in order to engage my brain. And I said, well, you know what? Here's the image that you're creating in my head. Is that you have this, I don't know military, so I might be using wrong terms, but a platoon or a troop or a squadron or whatever. You've got a whole bunch of people who have just been through hell and back fighting, a whole bunch of battles. And they have arrived at the edge of a minefield. And it's like, oh my God, after all of this, and they're afraid. And they're, and this new commander, this new leader comes to them and says, don't worry. I've been through a million minefields safely. I am an expert at getting through minefields. So follow me and I will lead you safely through the minefield. And she said, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to lead people safely through the minefield. So her purpose became leading safely through the minefield.
Oh.
Right. Okay, and you can imagine you've got all these troops who have just done a wonderful job of winning battles while at the same time keeping themselves alive.
Mm-hmm.
And they're cowering at the edge of this minefield,
Uh-huh.
wondering if they're going to be alive in a few
Mm-hmm.
minutes. And this person says, I'm an expert. I know how to get through this. I can do it with both hands tied behind my back. Just
Uh-huh.
follow me and I'll get you to the other side safely. And you could just remember I said a purpose statement has to resonate on a deep emotional level. Well,
Uh-huh.
they need her purpose statement.
Yeah.
So it resonates on a deep emotional level to them, and they just say, "Oh, fine, I'll follow you. Just get me to the other side safely."
Oh, wow. Huh.
So now here's how it gets used
Okay.
as a decision-making tool. She
Okay.
gets a call from a headhunter, and he says, "Have
Ooh.
I got a position for you? This company's doing great. It's like on a hockey stick to the moon, and what it needs is a really good CEO to keep it on that path to of really aggressive growth."
Mm-hmm.
And
She
her
said no.
her response, you got to bang on. No,
Yeah.
no.
It,
There's no challenge there for me. Everything has already been put into place. And
uh-huh.
she said, I need a tire fire. And he said, well, I got a steaming pile of garbage over here, but I'm embarrassed to show it to you. And she said, that's what I want to see. That
Mm.
is what I want to see.
Oh.
So she could have walked in, the first job,
Uh-huh.
99 out of 100 CEO prospects would have said, bring it on, give me that job. That's a
Yeah.
dream job.
Mm-hmm.
And she said no, because she knew it did not align with her purpose, that it didn't align with her beliefs, wants, and talents.
Huh.
But a tire fire does.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I was about to say, like, if there's not a challenge for her, then it's definitely not going to be interesting or fun or anything. I wonder if she has ADHD. Uh,
Mhm.
because I
She
know
may.
that fits in my bill right there.
She may. She may. I don't
Um,
know.
um, real quick before we get too much further, we are nearing the end of this episode. I know we've got about 15-ish minutes or so for radio cut and stuff, but I've got to ask because this is an awesome conversation, and I know we cannot get all of it in just 1 hour. So, do you think that we could have you on in the future, possibly?
Absolutely.
Sweet, because I don't think we really got too much of your story either. So I would love to like maybe dive into it a little bit more. But I mean, there's so much with purpose and everything because we hear all about it from the other side, but not from the let's actually do it side. So, um, real quick,
Do you
we've
want me to
got
tell you like
yeah,
the origin story?
yeah, sure, go for it.
Right.
Yeah.
So my it started with that book that I told you about. I took that
Mm-hmm.
course in university, and it
Yeah.
was like, normally you take a course and there's a textbook on the topic.
Yeah.
This course was the textbook,
Oh, okay.
the Gödel, Escher, and Bach.
Uh-huh.
And I had to do a paper for it. And keep in mind, you can tell by my gray hair, this was back in the early 80s.
That's not that long
So
ago.
DNA was a new thing back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to do an essay for this course on DNA.
Okay.
And it was sort of like DNA for dummies.
Oh.
And I had a roommate who was, one of the first genetic biology PhD candidates.
Uh-huh.
And so I just grilled him. And he had all the detail, all the, the scientific detail.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to cut through that
Ooh.
to get to the simple. And so what I did is I wrote a paper
Mm-hmm.
that used geography as a metaphor for DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Ooh.
So Toronto is the largest city in Canada. It's actually the third largest city in North America. So it only trails behind New York and LA
Mm-hmm.
in terms of size.
Mm.
And so I said, inside, imagine that this whole surrounding region
Mm-hmm.
is a cell,
Yeah.
and Toronto is the nucleus of the cell. It's the
Okay.
headquarters, right?
Yeah.
It's the corporate headquarters are in Toronto.
Uh-huh.
But the manufacturing plant is an hour away where, my university is that I was telling you about
Mm.
before.
Yeah.
So plans for what the plant is going to do
Mm.
have to be created at head office.
Mm.
And then they have to be transcribed, let's say, onto a piece of paper.
Mm.
And then that piece of paper has to be transported to the city an hour away where the manufacturing facility is. And then it has
Mm.
to be read there and the manufacturing has to happen.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Uh-huh.
the way a cell works. So, messenger DNA is what carries the instructions.
Mm.
Transfer DNA is what carries it to the other place in the cell.
Mm.
And then once the messenger DNA gets the instructions get to the manufacturing plant,
Uh-huh.
then the manufacturing plant produces proteins, because that's what cells do. They produce proteins
Mm.
among other things, but primarily proteins, I think. So I just used that sort of regional manufacturing plant and head office metaphor. God,
Mm.
this story is just getting so long. I'll abbreviate it.
No, 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 you're fine. You're fine.
But what that paper taught me, because
Uh-huh.
it was DNA for dummies essentially, and that
Uh-huh.
people who knew nothing about DNA could read it and say, "Oh, I understand DNA now,"
Uh-huh.
and that made me very proud. So this is where the simplifying started.
Mm.
Then I got a job when I left university at an advertising agency. I was a copywriter.
Mm.
And I'm sitting in front of my pardon me, I'm sitting in front of my typewriter, right? So I'm dating myself. Typewriter.
Oh boy.
And I'm typing words and they're dribble. They're
Mm.
cliche driven. It's awful. And
Mm.
my desire is to get to sort of the root, the authenticity of the brand or the product or the service, the company or whatever. And
Mm.
all I'm producing is cliches.
Mm.
So I went to a copywriter
Mm.
and I said, "Can you make me a sign that says, 'Is that true?'" And I taped it up on the wall behind my typewriter
Uh-huh.
so that as I'm typing, I'm constantly reminding myself to ask myself, is this true what I'm writing down? Is it true to the brand? Is it true to company? Is it true to the product?
Mm.
And it didn't make me a better copywriter, but it was the right idea.
Mm.
But this whole idea of is it true
Mm.
just became an obsession for me.
Mm.
And that's why I wanted. So I had a number of careers in between then and now. I was a
Uh-huh.
computer consultant for a while. I was in the television business, and then
Uh-huh.
I was in this business. And in all those businesses, getting to the root of what the business was all about became an
Mm.
obsession to me. And
Mm.
that's why, you know, the methodology starts with defining,
Mm.
digging, and defining that one thing at your essence that makes you uniquely remarkable as an organization. And when we did the blueprint for TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, it's the
Mm.
second biggest film festival in the world behind Cannes.
Wow.
And the COO said, we've gone through a number of these strategic exercises before, but you took us about 6 layers deeper.
Oh
I was
wow.
very flattered by that, but that's what it takes, 6
Yeah.
layers deeper,
Wow.
right? To
Mm.
get to the essence, to get to the root. And when we
Mm.
get there, the company feels transformed, and I
Mm.
feel I just can't tell you how good I feel when they discover their purpose statement and
Mm.
they're super excited about it. That's the dopamine hit that
Yeah.
that keeps me in this business.
Mm.
And when a customer of Purpose You said to me,
Mm.
"Oh my God, my life just fell into place. Everything I've done and everything I want to do, it's all reflected in this." It's like, okay, I'm done. That was wonderful.
That is so cool. I love that. And I'm glad you went into more detail with the origin story because I was kind of thinking like if I had to define what your purpose was from like the beginning with the DNA stuff, I would have been like your purpose is just asking questions. But because you're getting through that clarity and stuff, but the way that you actually utilize it is showing that it's totally a verb. Like you said, it's something that you gift to the world, and I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So,
And asking questions, by the way, is part of the methodology. So
Mhm.
In the corporate blueprint, we don't do this with individuals, but in the corporate blueprint, one of the most important questions that we have to answer
Mhm.
is what is your method? Excuse me, what is your methodology?
Oh,
And
okay.
here's the thing: is it always throws companies for a loop
I see.
because they don't know that they have a methodology. Every company has a methodology.
Mhm.
My methodology, just to give you a frame of reference,
Mhm.
my methodology is three parts. Define what makes you uniquely remarkable in 7 words or less.
Mhm.
Use it to guide how you operate, how you communicate, and use it to guide how you operate. That's the
Hmm.
three-part methodology of the blueprint. And
Okay.
every company has a methodology, and we
Mhm.
have to define your methodology.
Hmm.
And again, I've forgotten why I'm telling you about methodology. Oh my God. You got to
Uh,
start doing these interviews, not at the end of the day. That's
oh,
my excuse, and I'm sticking to it, Keegan.
oh, I mean, if you could convince somehow my bank account to take in podcast interviews, I would be more than happy to do this all day, every day.
Right,
It's
right, right.
got to work the normal 8 to 5 in the meantime. So I'm trying to get Retrieving Sanity to be a nonprofit mental health resource of
Oh, that
sorts.
would be great. That'd be
So,
great.
yeah.
So where I was going though was that when we define a methodology, I
Mm-hmm.
just lost it again. Methodology, methodology. Why am I saying method? Oh, you were asking me about asking questions. You were
Mm-hmm.
saying, you would have thought my purpose. No,
Yeah.
not my purpose isn't asking questions,
Mm.
but asking questions is a fundamental part of my methodology because my methodology,
Oh.
my individual methodology,
Mm-hmm.
is to deconstruct.
Oh.
So issues, my I say transforming confusion into clarity. And what that
Mm-hmm.
means is that you've got issues that are big and complex.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have answers, and they're causing, stress, anxiety, fear, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how do I transform confusion into clarity? Well, first of all, I get you to express what the big confusing issue is, but it's
Mm-hmm.
too big to take on
Yeah.
like that.
Mm.
So I break it down into smaller pieces, much the same way I said to you, that's the methodology we use in the Purpose You course.
Hmm.
We start with two accomplishments of yours.
Uh-huh.
Then we deconstruct them into simpler and simpler elements. And at
Mm-hmm.
some point in that deconstruction process, your purpose pops out.
Hmm.
It just
Okay.
pops out.
Huh.
And because you're breaking the complex issue down into simpler and simpler elements,
Mm-hmm.
when it pops out, it's simple and it's self-evident. And
Okay.
then you just work your way back up and you put it all back together. So deconstructing is my methodology, and
Okay.
asking questions is my means to deconstructing. So you
Oh.
weren't far off.
Okay. Oh, I love that. Thank you for the clarification and for the expansion as well, because it is great to know the origin story of Ian and how Purpose U came about. Because I feel that it's going to help out a ton of people. Because, like I said, I'm going to try it out whenever we're done here. So we'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, uh, are you ready to play that game real quick?
Oh, yeah, 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 sure.
Alrighty.
I'll do
So,
my best. No guarantees.
oh, hey, I'm still learning how to do it because it's different for every guest, and I'm just trying to learn how to be the best host I can. So, here we go. Now, if you don't know anything about my guest today, which you should have learned because man, we learned a lot about Ian and all about purpose, and so he has made a name for himself helping people and organizations find razor sharp clarity, the kind of clarity that cuts through the noise and sticks. Now, he has co authored a whole book about distilling your why down to 7 words or less, so, I couldn't really help but resist. I couldn't really resist the urge to flip the script. So it's time for a segment we call Say It Straight, where Ian has to do what he does best, but this time on the spot. Each prompt, they're semi real, or hopefully real. Each response, just 7 words or less. Think of it like verbal jujitsu, but with less concussions. So,
I'll do my best.
alrighty. So, not sample, prompt number one, your life's purpose, but say it like a cereal slogan. I mean, you pretty much got your transformation into clarity. I
Yeah,
think that's it.
transforming confusion into clarity. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah, that's it. Okay, so number
I
two.
wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. Do that.
All right. Well, I mean, if it was like a cereal slogan, it'd be like, oh yeah, no, never mind. I was thinking of like,
Oh, how about this?
okay.
Because it's actually the slogan for Purpose U. Life
Oh,
gets better with purpose.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, perfect. No, that yeah. On the dot.
Question one down.
Got it.
Bring it
Number
on. Number two.
number two. Describe a healthy team culture in 7 words or less.
Coaching.
Coaching. Whoa.
Yes. So let me just give you some background.
Okay.
Purpose is the one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable.
Uh huh.
Culture is the social extension of purpose.
Hmm.
It is putting your purpose into play
Mm.
in your company
Hmm.
so that everyone cooperates better.
Hmm.
Culture is how we cooperate, and it is the social extension of purpose. So,
Huh.
so, and purpose, because purpose is so adjacent
Mm-hmm.
sorry, because culture is so adjacent to purpose. I've thought a lot about culture and how
Mm-hmm.
it fits with purpose.
Yeah.
And um, so when a company says, we want to transform our
Mm.
culture, well,
Mm.
I think you have two options.
Okay.
You can, sort of nip around the edges and
Mm-hmm.
and make some, make some incremental changes to your culture, or you can
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally transform it. And the way to fundamentally transform your
Uh-huh.
corporate culture is to by shifting from a managerial structure to a
Mm.
coaching structure.
Mm.
So, if you are my boss,
Uh-huh.
Keegan,
Yeah.
no longer do I come to you and ask you what I'm to do or
Mm-hmm.
ask you the best way to do it. Or I no longer say, oh, I'm stuck. Can you help me out here?
Mm-hmm.
Or if I do, rather than answering my question, you be my coach.
Yeah.
And so, what a coach does, and I know because I've got my coaching certification, is he or she
Mm-hmm.
takes you on a conversation where you discover the answers yourself.
Yeah.
And when you discover the answers yourself, you are more bought into them, you understand them better, you're more inspired by them,
Mm-hmm.
and you're better able to execute them on them.
Hmm.
So, better culture, coaching. Make it a
Oh.
coaching culture.
I love that. And that sounds like a lot of places that uh some of the places I've worked at had something similar, and those were definitely the places that I liked working
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
at. So,
Yeah. Because you
thank you.
were empowered.
Yeah.
You weren't told what to do, you were empowered.
Yep. I love that. Thank you, Ian. That was number two. But number three might throw you for a loop because you're kind of looking the part today. Brand yourself as a supervillain.
Oh, yeah. uh, Cyclops?
Fair enough. Um, Brand yourself as a supervillain in 7 words or less. Could you do that? I mean, it would be the opposite of what you do now, right? You would be sowing confusion into clarity.
Yes.
So, yeah.
No, I'd be sowing clarity into confusion.
Oh. All right. Number four, convince a burnt out entrepreneur to keep going in 7 words or less.
Oh, discover your company's purpose.
Ah.
If you're burnt out,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
then um, so when you discover your company's purpose,
Mm-hmm.
your purpose articulates you much bigger than you have ever seen yourself before.
Hmm.
And I'll give you an example
Okay.
in a really boring industry. And I say that with my client's permission
Okay.
because it's an actuarial firm.
Oh.
And until I got the actuarial firm as a client,
Mm-hmm.
my most boring client, and I love this company, and the CEO is a good friend of mine, but it
Uh-huh.
was a retail shelving company, right? Home Depot
Mm.
builds a box, they go in, they put up all the rack shelving.
Mm.
Unsexy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So my actuarial clients, they told me this joke. How do
Mm.
you know when an actuary is an extrovert?
Hmm.
when they look at your shoes when they're talking to you rather than looking at their own. And I can tell that joke because they gave me permission.
Okay.
So these people
Uh-huh.
specialized in defined benefit pensions. You don't need to know, the technicality of that. All you need to know is that if you were a company and you had
Mhm.
defined benefit pensions,
Mhm.
then you really needed an actuarial firm, and they made a ton of money off of being
Yeah.
that actuarial firm. But because defined benefit pensions are too expensive for the company, they shifted to defined. Oh gosh, I can't even remember the name. But the point is, for the new kind,
Uh-huh.
you don't need an actuary that much.
Hmm.
So they came to us and they said, our future is disappearing before our eyes.
Mm.
Where do we get sales from in the future?
Yeah.
And I said to them, figure out your purpose, and your purpose will answer that question for you.
Huh.
And, to their credit, they said, okay. And so I got them to talk, or that's what we do. We just get them to talk and talk and talk. And I said, okay, here's what I heard you say.
Mhm.
Um, that the CEO and the COO of your client has
Mhm.
to make critical decisions now about how to make big chunks of money grow in the future.
Mhm.
Right, they said. And you have mathematical models that you
Mhm.
develop that help the CEO and the CFO make better decisions now. Remember that thing, better decisions
Uh-huh.
about what to do with those big chunks of money. They said,
Mhm.
yep. And I said, and you've given me 3 compelling reasons why your mathematical models are better than your competitors. And they said, yep. And I said, well, it sounds like you're in the business of predicting the future. Well, the tops of their heads blew off. So you're talking about people who are risk averse.
Uh-huh.
And the idea that you could predict the future
Uh-huh.
is just like anathema to them.
Mhm.
And so I had to like get them. I said, no, it's not about predicting your future, but it is about creating a greater degree of certainty about the future.
Ooh, yeah.
And they were still like, no, certainty, no, we can't do certainty. I said, no, listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying certainty, I'm saying a
Mhm.
greater degree of certainty. And if
Mhm.
you're going to push back on that, what's the value of your mathematical models? If you are
Mm.
not giving the CEO and the
Mhm.
CFO greater certainty
Mhm.
about their decisions now about how to make big chunks of money get bigger in the future.
Mhm.
And they got that.
Huh.
So their purpose became transforming confusion. No, that's mine. Their purpose became creating a greater degree of certainty. And
Oh.
here's the interesting thing that happened with
Uh-huh.
their decision. I've forgotten what your question was, but here's what happened.
Mhm.
When you define yourself as actuaries
Mhm.
or as specialists in defined benefit pensions,
Mhm.
defined contribution is the other benefit. So your world is
Uh-huh.
narrow and getting narrower by the day.
Yeah.
But when you define yourself as creating a greater degree of certainty, those blinders go like this.
Mm. Yeah.
And you say, well, we don't have to just do defined benefit pensions. We have a
Yeah.
skill set to create a greater degree of certainty
Uh-huh.
anywhere.
Ah.
And so what they said was, we're going to go and we're going to create
Mhm.
um, a new business
Oh.
because our old company is too closely associated with defined benefit pensions. But this new
Uh-huh.
business is going to be about a greater degree of certainty. And we're going to go to 3 businesses in the first
Mhm.
year. And we're going to say, we're going to do some work for free for you
Wow.
because we need to test out our model.
Mhm.
And when I went to interview Jill, the CEO for our book,
Mhm.
she said, um, oh, yeah. So we went out to those 3 companies
Mhm.
and we told them the greater degree of certainty story.
Mhm.
And before we could say to them, we want to do our work for free for you so that we
Mhm.
can learn about, how to live this new life, they said, oh, that sounds really cool. Give me a proposal. So they learned on the customer's dime
Yeah.
how to
Wow.
be a greater degree of certainty rather than a specialist in defined benefit pensions.
Wow. That's
And I'll
really
just say as a last point on that,
okay.
they have this area that's a big cube farm, right? So they've got all
Mhm.
these employees working in cube farms. And she said, I was walking through the cube farm the other day,
Mhm.
and I was shocked at how many employees had printed out on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper in big letters,
Mm-hmm.
creating a greater degree of certainty. And they pinned it up on their wall
Ooh, yeah.
because they were proud of it.
Yeah.
They now had a purpose
Mm-hmm.
that inspired them, that wasn't mathematical models.
Mm-hmm.
Mathematical models were just the way that they lived their purpose.
Yeah.
But they had this higher purpose, which is creating a greater degree of certainty for their clients.
Hmm.
And if after doing what they did, their client says, wow, I was far more confident in that decision than I've been in the past. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing. That's the dopamine hit for them.
Yep. Wow. Huh. I love that. That is a really, really cool story.
Thank you.
Um, of course. Thank you very much for playing our new game, Say It Straight. We do have a few more prompts, but we are running out of time.
Yeah,
So,
my answer. I can talk.
no, no, I'm a chatty Cathy myself. I will chatterbox all day, every day if I have the chance, and especially if I'm in like the proper headspace.
Right.
But um, because you were the first person to play Say It Straight. I almost said something else. I don't know what I was about to say. Um, Ian, since you are the first person to play Say It Straight and you have answered your prompts rather well and explained them even better, you have earned the honorary title, the Clarity Conductor of Purposeful Positioning for Retrieving Sanity.
Woohoo.
So, now, Ian, the name of this podcast is Retrieving Sanity, and we explore how all facets of life impact our mental health. Looking at the incredible motley adventures of your own life, what does retrieving sanity mean to you today personally? And what's one practice or perspective that you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh, so retrieving sanity to me is staying grounded in your authentic you.
Ooh.
And when you're not retrieving or retaining or in a position of sanity, it's because, either outside or organic factors have thrown you off that.
Mm.
But when you are in this state of being authentically who you are, that's like an ideal state.
Mm.
And so the one thing that I started doing about 4 or 5 months ago
Mm-hmm.
that I noticed had a big impact just on my mental health
Mm-hmm.
is I started breathing from my diaphragm the way you're
Mm.
supposed to breathe. So rather than breathing from your ribs, breathe into your stomach. And what I was told and what I noticed is it
Mm-hmm.
has a different physiological effect on you
Mm-hmm.
when you close your eyes or just do it while you're watching TV. Just focus on your breathing
Mm-hmm.
and breathe into your stomach so that you're breathing from your diaphragm. And I find my body just sort of goes "Ugh," when I do that.
Yeah.
Right? It
Yeah.
it it just calms down a bit.
Hmm.
So all the whatever I'm carrying
Mm-hmm.
in my muscles and skeleton and whatever, it just sort of goes. "Huh."
Huh.
Helps me get to sleep.
Heck yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Getting to sleep definitely helps retrieve a little bit of sanity at the end of
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
day. So, Ian, thank you very much for being on the show today,
Oh,
and
it's my pleasure, Keegan.
I look forward to having you on again because it was so much fun learning all about you and all about purpose and purpose you. So, we've got a little bit of time in between our next episode, so that way we can actually figure out like have maybe I'm more aligned with my purpose than I thought I was, or maybe it's something entirely different. Who knows? But it's going to be super interesting. Um,
Well,
and
maybe if you do the course, I'll come back on and we'll talk about your experience.
yeah, we can totally do that. So, Ian, again, thank you for being on the show. I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it very much, and it has been an honor and a pleasure once again. And everyone out there, thank you for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM. As always, much love to you, yourself, and others if you can, because sometimes loving is hard. But we'll see you next week. And as always, again, try to stay safe. Much love. Shalom. All right. And stop. Cool.